I am predicting at this point that the Roe versus Wade Supreme Court ruling, which makes abortion, the termination of a pregnancy by a woman, legal in every part of the United States, I believe that that will, at some point, not immediately, perhaps not as quickly as some people are anticipating, I believe it will be overturned. I believe that Roe versus Wade will be overturned and that certain states will be granted permission by the U.S. Supreme Court to deny women the right to an abortion. And the reason that I believe Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned is actually pretty simple. Basically, Donald Trump took office because in the Rust Belt states and in the southern states, there's a lot of people who used to be part of the prosperous middle class of the United States of America, that white picket fence, happy middle class, working class, well-paid labor aristocracy existence. They used to be very comfortable, right? You go to the suburbs around Cleveland, right? Lakewood. You go to the suburbs of Chicago, Evanston, right? You go throughout the South. You go throughout rural areas, right? I mean, I grew up in a rural area in Ohio, for example. You go all throughout this country. And for those of us who live in urban centers, it's very easy to forget. But if you go outside of urban centers, this is a very, very big country. And there are a lot of small towns. There are a lot of suburbs. And the folks in those small towns and suburbs used to have a very, very, very comfortable life, for the most part. There was a lot of middle-class jobs. There was a lot of factory jobs. There were a lot of, just kind of middle-class jobs. And all of that is starting to dry up. And the financial crisis of 2008 was very much a response to the fact that the spending power of average Americans has been consistently decreasing since the 1980s. Since the 1980s, the ability of average Americans to buy stuff has been going down gradually. They talk about the jobless recoveries. And over the course of time, the average income of American families has been decreasing. And as that process has continued, we've been seeing life for people in those suburbs, life for people in those rural areas getting gradually worse. And as that process has taken place, a lot of those folks have turned to religion for solace, and that the religious right, it's always been a factor. You've always had fanatically religious people in the United States, but what people call the religious right, the entity that they refer to as the religious right, Jerry Falwell, Pat Robertson, the evangelical movement aligned with the Republican Party, that faction gained a lot of power. As people were losing their jobs and incomes, they turned to religion. You had the rise of the mega churches. You had the rise of non-denominational Christianity, right? It used to be, sure, you had a lot of fundamentalists and conservative Christians, but you had the rise of these mega churches where you ask them, are you a Baptist? Are you a Lutheran? They'd be like, we just believe the Bible, man. We just believe the Bible. It's the Word of God. We don't care about all that other stuff. And they'd have the rock band and the big movie screen at the front showing what the preacher is talking about, and everyone gets into their kind of emotional thing, and they get all their emotions out on Sunday morning. And that movement that was really key to, the rise of the Republican Party and really the neocon faction within the Republican Party. That faction, they gained a lot of power in the 1980s. They were, they were very, very key in fighting against Bill Clinton and the contract for America and all of that was going on. That the Bush administration really, gave them more power and more influence than they've ever had. And after that, since that time, their influence has been in decline. They got a pretty good punch in the nose, I would say, from the new atheists, right? Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris. Those folks gave them a pretty solid punch in the nose. And so did the internet. The internet gave them a pretty solid punch in the nose also, right? The fact that people can now get on the internet and Google the things that they're saying. And the number of people, especially among the younger generations, that adhere to the ideas of the Christian right is decreasing, right? Young people pull out their phones and they Google when the Christian right, they put up a picture that proves that the earth is only 6,000 years old because, look, you've got a dinosaur footprint next to a human footprint, so therefore there's no such thing as Darwin's evolution. The teenager then pulls out their phone and Googles it and debunks it. The information revolution, the new atheists, they've weakened the Christian right, right? And I don't think they've weakened Christianity. I think Christianity as a religion is quite strong, but the Christian right, the evangelical Christian right, is quite weakened. And the Bush years was kind of their last hurrah. And actually, the majority of Christian evangelicals voted for Barack Obama both times, interestingly. No one talks about that. And now, lo and behold, we see the Republican Party really get taken over. Trump swept in, and the reason that Trump was so victorious, and the reason Trump won the Republican nomination in 2016, is he was saying, look, I am not a normal Republican, right? And he went in there, and the neocons, the neoconservatives that have used and cultivated the Christian right, got blown away. And Trump came in there, and you'll remember he made the joke about the size of his hands in the debates, and he was crass, and he was rude, and he's been married multiple times, and Donald Trump is not the kind of person that any Bible thumper, any evangelical could respect, right? With his foul mouth and his attitude and his rudeness and his lifestyle that he lives. And the evangelicals are losing influence. Now, Trump then nominated, of course, a big evangelical, Mike Pence, to be his vice president. But lo and behold, the Christian right is losing power in the Republican Party, and it's losing it fast. Young people in conservative areas are not becoming evangelicals. The evangelical churches they don't have the influence they once had, and they're losing power. And the thing is, a lot of people inside the Republican Party are thinking more and more like Steve Bannon. They're thinking more and more, in terms of isolationism, economic nationalism. These ideas are growing. People talk about the rise of alt-right and things to that effect, and that ultimately the neocon faction is losing ground in the Republican Party, and the evangelical Christian movement, they are so important to that neocon faction. So my prediction is that in order to re-strengthen the evangelical movement within the Republican Party, they are going to grant a victory to the Christian right. They're going to make it so that Georgia and Alabama and Texas and Mississippi and states like that can outlaw abortion. I think that's going to happen. And the reason that they're going to do it is because they want all these young, not young people, all these folks in red states that are part of the evangelical Christian right. They want all of them to feel like their movement has momentum, like the people in Washington, D.C. are listening to them, like they're getting things done. And I don't think it'll lead to abortion being illegal in the United States overall. That definitely won't happen. And in fact, I think even some of these trigger laws they have in the states, like Alabama and Georgia and Texas, where they want to make it illegal to leave the state with the intent of getting an abortion, that'll be overturned. I think the Rockefeller family and the liberal wing of American capitalism will set up a scholarship fund to pay for your bus trip to New York or wherever you go to get an abortion. Right? There is a big section of the American ruling class that wants abortion to remain legal. I would say the majority of the ruling class of the United States would prefer that abortion remain legal, not because they care about women's rights, but because they feel like there's too many of us, especially with automation, right? They don't need workers anymore, and there are too many of us, and we're breeding, and we're having revolutions and protests, and we're supporting the rise of populist governments around the world. They talk about overpopulation. That's been an obsession of the Rockefellers. It's an obsession of Bill Gates, right? There's just too many of us working class people. Bill Gates feels that way. The Rockefellers feel that way. I'm sure Jeff Bezos feels that way. There's just too many common people, too many working class people in the world. We're breeding too much. And so they're going to do everything they can to keep abortion legal. But my prediction is it will be illegal in Georgia and Alabama, but they'll enable people in Georgia and Alabama to get on a bus and go to New York to get their abortion, to go to, some other state and get their abortion. Now, one wild card is the rise of these southern cities, right? The hipster centers, right? Places like Charlotte, North Carolina, for example. These cities, Atlanta, Georgia, right, that are really trying to become gentrified and hipsterized. It's not going to be a big selling point. Not many young hipsters are going to want to move to a state where they just outlawed abortion. So there you go. Now, my prediction is that they will, in order to try and control the Republican Party, to give more oomph to the Christian right, they'll allow abortion to be outlawed in certain states. But I could be wrong. It hasn't happened yet. And I feel like, at the end of the day, the two most powerful wings of American politics, they would love to have an abortion fight. And you can tell it. You turn on Fox this week, you turn on MSNBC this week, you turn on CNN this week, they want to have this fight so bad. Oh, they are so excited. This is what they want. This is what they know how to do. This is politics getting back to normal, right? The Hillary Clinton wing of the Democratic Party, with liberal feminists and advocates of women's rights and the evangelical neocon wing of the Republican Party that says family values and Christianity and we need to get back to the Bible. They want this so bad because this is a fight where they get to be in charge. The Hillary Clinton DNC wing can be the advocates of keeping abortion, quote, legal and rare, and lo and behold, the conservative, neocon, evangelical, bomb Venezuela, have lots of wars, and support the U.S. military establishment. That wing, they want to have this fight so bad. Culture wars, the Kulturkampf, right? That's a term. Now, a lot of people will tell you that Kulturkampf or culture war is a Nazi term. The Nazis probably used it, but it goes back way further than that. As Germany was emerging as a country, the Kaiser, the German state, figured out that a way to control the population and weaken the power of the Marxist movement and social democracy was to stage Kulturkampfs. And it was mainly between Catholic Germans and non-Catholic Germans, and that the Catholic Church would have one position of something they wanted to be illegal, or some rule or some law that they wanted, or something about how the schools would be set up, and the Catholic Germans would all be for it, because they were Catholic, and they were in the Catholic areas, and they went to Catholic schools, and they went to the church on Sunday, and the Protestant Germans and the secular Germans would be against it. And it was a way of playing German workers against each other and moving the conversation away from class struggle. And that the Kaiser's regime in Germany, as they were facing the rise of what became the biggest Marxist party in the world until World War I, the German Social Democratic Party, that's, if you read Karl Marx's Critique of the Gotha Program, that's the party, that's the Gotha Program, that's the German SPD. As the German Social Democratic Party was becoming more and more powerful, and gaining more and more influence, and trade unions were spreading all across Germany. Marxism was rising in Germany. German workers were striking and demanding their rights on the job. The Kaiser's regime would stage Kulturkampfs. And Kulturkampfs are perfect because it's not an issue you can resolve, right? Right. There might be some people who believe that, hey, if we raise the minimum wage, that'll hurt the economy. And there might be some people who believe that actually it won't. And you can discuss, and you can debate, and you can convince people. I have convinced many people to become socialists. I've argued with many people and won many people to socialism. But I can guarantee you that I have never and I will never change anyone's mind about abortion. If someone in the United States is part of the evangelical Christian right, or they're Roman Catholic, and they believe that abortion is the equivalent of murder, there is nothing I can do to change that. There's nothing you can do to change that. You're arguing with someone's fundamental beliefs. In order for them to admit that abortion were not murder, in order for them to come to that conclusion, you would basically have to deconstruct everything about their identity, everything about their religion. You would have to completely change their worldview, right? And you're not going to do that, right? The way that they see their family, the way that they see the society they lived in, you'd have to completely reshuffle all of that to convince somebody who believes abortion is murder that abortion is not murder. Ain't going to happen. You're not going to change anyone's mind on that issue. So it's just a culture war, right? It's a culture war, right? It is a worldview. Do you think that abortion is the equivalent of murder? Do you think that abortion is a woman's right? Is something that's a woman's business? Maybe it is, but that's not completely clear, and it's an ethical decision that should be left up to the mother. Or do you believe that abortion should be treated as if it is a capital offense, right? It's a murder, right? The people who believe abortion is murder, you will never change their mind. I can guarantee you that. It's trying to convince someone who's a flat earther that the earth is round. I mean, it's just, they've taken a leap of faith. They believe this. Their family believes this. Their community believes this. You're not going to change them. And that's what's so perfect about it. It's not an argument that can be won or resolved. It's an argument that can only result in further division of people, just like the Kulturkampfs that the Kaiser staged in Germany, right? And he would trying to divide the German working class and prevent the rise of Marxism. He would play the Catholic workers against the Protestant workers in his Kulturkampfs. It's about controlling people, right? And I can guarantee you that Hillary Clinton would love to have a big evangelical fight with the evangelicals over abortion. The DNC wing of the Democratic Party is just as excited about this as the conservative evangelicals are. They both want to take back control of their parties. The Republican neocons want to beat down economic nationalism and right-wing populism. The DNC and the mainstream Democratic Party, the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and the DuPonts, and you can go down the line. David Cohen, who is the top lobbyist for Comcast, who had the fundraiser at his house, to launch Joe Biden's campaign. Those folks really, really want to have an abortion fight. They are excited. Please, they're sitting there, please give us a big abortion fight. Let's make abortion the big issue that the U.S. politics is all about, because no one's mind is going to change, and the Christian conservatives will line up against the liberals, and it'll be a culture clash, and it'll be California and New York versus Texas and Idaho, and they want this so bad. They want politics in the United States to get back to normal. That's what they want. They really, really want. The mainstreams of the Republican and Democratic Party, they want politics in the USA to go back to how it was before the financial meltdown of 2008. They want the Bush years back. It was so easy during the Bush years, right? You were with Bush or you're against him. It was so easy. It was culture struggle. It was, they want it back. They want politics in the USA to get back to normal. They want a culture war. They want Christian evangelicals fighting against liberal hippies and nonconformists. They want, latte drinking, SUV driving, yuppie liberals fighting against average working men who go to church on Sunday and have guns. And they want it to be like that again. They really want politics in the USA to go back to the Cold War normal. Right? The Okie from Muskogee. That was a hit song during the Nixon years. I'm proud to be an Okie from Muskogee. Right? It was the hippies, the urban, liberal, yuppie, hippie, middle-class, intellectual types, and the African-American community and the Latino community versus the white working class of, conservative labor aristocracy. That's what they want. They want the fight to line up like that. U.S. politics is not going to go that way. I'll just tell you, folks, U.S. politics is not going to go back to the way it was during the Cold War, no matter how much these guys want it. They really want it. They really, really want U.S. politics to go back to the Cold War normal. Not going to happen, but having a big abortion fight is going to be their attempt to do it that way. There's an old expression that generals always fight the last war, right? If you look at World War I, for the first bit of World War I, our generals were trying to fight the Civil War. For the first part of the Civil War, our generals were trying to fight the Revolutionary War. They had muskets and everything, right? The generals are always fighting the last war. The war happens, and the generals remember, what did we do wrong? How could we have fought that war more effectively? And they go to the next war with new conditions, having learned everything from the last war, and they fight the new war as if it is the last war, doing everything even better than they did it before. That's basically what's going on. And that's what's happening with Elliott Abrams. That's what's happening with John Bolton with Venezuela. They're fighting the Cold War, and they think they're fighting the Cold War better. They've remembered all their mistakes. They've summed up everything they did wrong during the Cold War, and they're trying to fight the Cold War against the Soviet Union in Latin America, in Venezuela in 2019, and it's not working because they're fighting the last war. Generals fighting the last war. That's what's going on here. An abortion fight, an epic battle over whether or not a fetus should be granted the rights of a full human being, whether or not you should declare a fetus to be a person, and that fight about whether abortion should be legal or illegal, or whether states should be allowed to outlaw abortion, that fight is generals fighting the last war. It is the ruling class trying their hardest to get back to the Cold War, Middle America normal. And it's not going to happen. It's not going to work, but it's their attempt. And that's my prediction, that to escalate the Kulturkampf, right? To get evangelical and conservative Americans up in arms against liberal, feminist, middle-class, urban Americans, to have that divide, to get the Kulturkampf going, my prediction is that they're going to allow certain states, red states, to outlaw abortion. That's my prediction. That's my prediction. I hope it doesn't happen. I don't think that would be good for the country to have that divide escalate, because I think at the end of the day, we don't need to be whipsawed. We don't need the working class of the United States to be zzz. We need class struggle politics. When Bernie Sanders talks about a 50-state strategy, I think he's on to something, right? We need there to be economic-based class struggle in the United States, and escalating a culture war is a guaranteed way to keep it happening. But my prediction is, in the hopes of trying to get the United States back to political normal, they are going to outlaw abortion in certain states, but they will not outlaw it at a federal level, and they'll basically make sure that all the people living in those states, all the women living in those states, still kind of have access with a scholarship fund so they can get on the bus and drive to whatever state where it's legal. I think that they will keep abortion accessible, but they'll allow certain states to outlaw it. That is Caleb Maupin's prediction. I have been wrong before, but I have been right before too. So keep in mind, right? And I'm not telling you it'll happen immediately. I think it'll gradually happen. But my prediction is, give it a couple years maybe, they'll overturn Roe versus Wade. Abortion will remain accessible in the United States, but they'll allow certain states to overturn it in order to re-energize the evangelicals and spark the culture war they desperately want to have. That's my prediction on that.